Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Can I Kick It FC? I'm your host, as always, Yogi, and joining me is a guy that has traveled almost all over the world to see probably his beloved Colombia, to go see various of the football's game. He's better than Travago. He's the next Expedia, and he's probably held toes to go as well. He can tell you where and everything you need to do to get ready for your upcoming trip, especially for 2026 World Cup and the 2025 Club World Cup as well.
Correct.
It is Mr. Danny, also known as Travel Futbol Fan. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I can't complain, man. I can't complain. I had to make sure I get everything in there because I love giving my guests a good intro, because not everyone knows your content, but we definitely get into it. But
Yeah, absolutely.
before we started recording, me and Danny actually realized that we have a lot more in common, like such as the hellscape that is 95.
Yep, I-95 up down from Arlington, Virginia, down to Petersburg and past that.
Oh my god, it is the worst. It is the worst. Also around college at the same time, you're a UVA grad. I'm a Virginia State grad. A lot of shared history between those two schools as well. But Danny, and I'll let you introduce yourself, man. How did you get into becoming known as the Travel Futbol Fan?
Yeah, absolutely. So quick background. So I'm originally from Miami, Florida.
Okay.
Colombian by blood, but born here in the States. And and then now I'm here in Virginia, by DC. I went to school here in Virginia, got both my degrees here and everything. So I'm pretty much, Virginia's kind of become like my second home in many respects in my life. And so, how I got into this content was purely accidental. It was never necessarily meant that, oh yeah, I'm going to be a TikTok star or anything like that. So my wife and I, we went to the Qatar World Cup, and that was the first World Cup I'd ever been to, and for her as well. I'm definitely the big soccer fan of the two.
I was about to say, like, how did you convince your wife? I mean, we can talk about it later. But how did you convince your wife to do this?
So gentlemen, pay attention here, because and just for your special someone, right? Because ladies might love soccer too, more than their male companions, and and everyone in between. So we flew Emirates business class to Dubai. And so instead of paying over $12,000 for those round trip tickets in business class, we used up a good amount of our travel miles that we collect from our credit cards to book that flight. And we only ended up paying about $1,000 out of pocket, with about 200, I think it was 280,000 miles or something like that. And we were to fly business class direct to Dubai, 13 hours straight, lie flat seat, champagne, all the meals you wanted, and there was there's a bar on the plane, on the specific plane that they fly. They have a bar for business and first class passengers only. So just the works. When we were in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and in Doha, 11 of the 15 nights that we spent over there were free, because we had our hotel points that we also used to just book our hotel stays. That saved us an additional $5,000. And then we had some additional credits and other items that we have from our credit cards and from the other points we've earned, to save us an additional couple $1,000s in other travels and expenses that we had on the ground. So overall, I was able to give my wife a 5-star luxury experience in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and then I was able to go to a soccer game, right? And funny enough, it was the Brazil South Korea round of 16, where Joga Bonito was at its peak. I think I tell fans, I think I saw the last game that Brazil played Joga Bonito, because since then they've been terrible at the South American eliminatorias. So at Doha, I saw an older Colombian gentleman, in his 60s, and he was organizing a group of people, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm Colombian, yeah, and I was definitely wearing my Colombia jersey for the day, and I was like, yeah, but we're not here. So why are all these Colombians here in Doha? And I go ask him in Spanish, hey, what's up? Is why all of you here? And he was like, oh, I run a travel company. I got all these Colombians come over here, and they're exploring, and they're just watching games. And I was like, you speak Arabic? I was like, no, I know a guy that knows a guy, and that's how we make all this happen, right? All this itinerary, all the travel and everything. And I was like, and that really struck with me, because I was like, I live in the States, this World Cup is going to be the largest ever, right? 3 countries, 16 cities, as continental as you can get. We're going to go from, as some fans described it on the ground, the Disney World of FIFA World Cups, because you could literally almost go to every game on the
Yeah.
same day, to how am I supposed to get from New York to LA? From Ciudad de Mexico to Vancouver? Like, how am I supposed to get around? So that was where, the idea started with Travel Football Fan. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Before I could even tell people I travel, they need to save money. Literally, I did a 3-minute TikTok about, hey, y'all just need to save money. Boom. It just started from there.
All right. Well, I mean, it always starts with saving money because you want to do everything. You got to make sure you're financially smart in it.
That is correct.
So we're at Doha and everything like that. But what is your first experience traveling to like major football matches, and how did it shape you as a fan? Overall?
Yeah. So funny enough, this was that first experience of like actually traveling for the purpose of going to a game. Because I mean, I was traveling with my wife for like over 5 years now. We actually have our own separate Instagram page that Latinos with Passports, which we do a little bit of like couple travel content there, as two first-gen Latinos, traveling the world in mostly business class and first class, even though mostly abroad, but domestically it's always the economy flights. But no, that was the first trip that I went for the purpose of going to that soccer game. And so since then, I was able to travel to Tangier, Morocco for the Sounders Club World Cup match versus Al Ahly. Traveled within the United States to go watch matches before that. Wait a minute. I'm a dummy. I apologize. I just remembered I went to the Mexico City to see USA Mexico World Cup qualifier. I totally forgot about that one. That was really the first one. It's just, this was the first one as Travel Football Fan. That trip before was kind of I guess you could say the prelude to all
the prelude to where you are now.
Yeah, the prelude. But then, of course, that one, because my wife is Mexican, there's also that convince. It's like, hey, honey, let's go to Mexico City. Let's connect with your culture, because, she actually, that was, I think, her first trip to Mexico City in her life. So it was also kind of connecting and exploring culture with soccer. So it wasn't really, even with the World Cup trip, it's, that was our 5th time in Dubai. We love the place over there. We love spending time in the Middle East. And it's all of these trips that we've taken, there's always a component of wanting to connect and learn more about the local culture. So, from USA, Mexico, seeing that rivalry up close to, to Doha, to Tangier, and everywhere in between, it's always been a mix. It's never just go to the game, stay at the hotel, next day you leave. No, there's always more to it.
Do you feel like that kind of like makes you appreciate it a little bit more of being able to embrace the culture and whatnot? Because, like, granted, we live here in America, so for anyone that listens to international, it's a lot different. International fans, they can take a train, walk to the stadium, and be back home within the span of 4 or 5 hours. For us, it's like, yo, I gotta probably take PTO, take a day off, make sure I got a full tank of gas, get all this stuff you got to think about.
That's correct.
For you and your wife, like, being able to embrace yourself in this culture and what I understand, like, what's going on. How is that experience different than just the normal match day experience for most fans?
Yeah, so I'll compare, for example, when we went to a Colombian B, the B division soccer match in Cartagena. With Qatar. With Cartagena, there had to be a little bit more mindfulness of my wife's security. Like we don't know how the stadium looks like. This first time that we were going to that match, and not to say that it was dangerous or anything like that. We were already running late. We didn't have the tickets in hand. You basically had to buy them off of a person that was outside the gate, and there's like 10 of these dudes rushing you. So like you're just always kind of like, hey, yo, watch my wife. Like, come talk to me. That type of thing. You get into the game, you relax, and then everything's cool, right?
Okay.
In that respect, going from, say that experience compared to Doha, didn't have to worry. If there was one of the good things about the Qatar World Cup was that, and in general with our travels to the Emirates, to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, the safety is just unmatched. Like there's just a level of safety that I do not have to worry about my wife. Whereas, unfortunately, here in the States, or maybe even, to some games that I haven't been to, like, for example, the Super Clásico in Argentina, Boca Juniors and River Plate. probably not taking my wife along for that ride. I mean, that's a little bit of the too intense. And even then, that might even be too intense for me. And I'm South American. And I'm my only experiences with those games is just watching on TV. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, that's intense, man. That's intense.
No, that's different, man.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that you're looking out for your wife and whatnot, because a lot of the times, you go somewhere, you're like, oh, hey, I just tag along, you'll be fine. But you're like, try to take care of her. I want to come back to the point where you were talking about going to the Club World Cup to go see Seattle Sounders. Like, what are kind of like the memorable moments for them? Because honestly, that's the first time we've ever seen an MLS club in the Club World Cup. So how was that experience interacting with the Seattle Sounders fans that made the trip, being in that environment, seeing them on this global stage?
Yeah.
Truly in the last iteration of the Club World Cup that was good?
Yeah, or at least unique, to say the least, right? Because of the format and everything. So I would say this: the Moroccan people, very, very cool people, very, very nice to us, and I would say that they were probably surprised that the Emerald City supporters group was there doing chants. They got everyone together. I think that was the biggest perhaps shock to them, of like, wait, you Americans like soccer? You guys are here? You guys like. They were surprised we were there, right, in that respect. And mind you, I had flown by myself to Tangier to meet up with the Emerald City Supporters Group fans. And so I took the trip upon just by myself, whereas, a lot of these fans had made the trip there by themselves. I think that overall it was a very, it's one of these stories that I don't think is talked enough, of the Sounders and of the fans of the Sounders and just fans of American soccer in general, going to Morocco, going to Tangier. It's not even one of the, like Tangier, perhaps maybe not one of the lower on the rank of the major cities, but still going to Tangier and showing up for a soccer game and cheering at the stadium and seeing the Egyptian fans and the local fans and just everyone seeing us. I think people are undervaluing just how important that exposure was, for specifically for the Sounders, for sure, but I think just for American soccer in general.
Yeah, and maybe I'm a little ignorant to it, but I feel like a lot of people have a certain description of what they think of what an American fan is. Like, we sit there, we do the little golf clap, or like, okay, whatever. Or you get like the really corny clips of like this 10-minute clip of like somebody voice cracking, trying to do a chant and whatnot. But no, like, to be able to see that and be able to show that on a global stage, I'm pretty sure they did take some people away from it.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I mean, and the chants were organized, and like they did their Sounders lyrics, and we did. There was a couple of them in Spanish as well, so I think that might have also surprised a couple of them. Like, wait, what? Like, what is going? Like, it was almost kind of like, what is going on here? This is not what we thought an American soccer fan base looks like in that respect. Of course, we were never. I guess you could say we were not as intense as the Al Ahly fans. Lighting flares, and they in themselves super impressive group of fans. I'll tell you, sidebar for Inter Miami for the Club World Cup, about the worst draw that they could have gotten, because they got three teams that they're gonna come in and slide tackle half of Miami out of this tournament. They're gonna want to win this tournament if it still happens. We can talk more about that later, but. Clearly, Al Ahly is a very solid team, and unfortunately the Sounders lost. But like I said, I think it's one of these stories that is just so underrated, and I'm very surprised MLS. I feel like they could have done more with that story.
That's a different podcast for a different day about MLS and their short-sightedness on a lot of things. But going more so to the travel football fan, you're not like an agent or anything. You're giving helpful advice. So I'm going to ask you this question. What are some of the most common mistakes that fans have when it comes to booking travel or going to foreign countries, or even domestically, when they're going to go watch their clubs for matches?
I think a common mistake might be, I know you introduced me, with Expedia and Trivago, and funny enough, those websites, they do tend to offer a cheaper price. But what's that mantra? You pay what you get, right? Or the service you get is what you pay. So the problem with booking through those sites is that, say at a hotel, the hotel's going to prioritize their loyalty members. Then they're going to prioritize anyone else that booked with them directly. And then they're going to prioritize those that booked on those sites like Expedia, Priceline, Trivago. So if you're having issues with your reservation, you're going to have to wait a while. to get those issues fixed.
Yeah.
And then as we saw during the pandemic, funny enough, it was also the issue of refunds more than anything else. My wife and I, we had a trip planned for Paris, and and it got canceled. It took us over 6 months for us to finally get a refund because we had booked it through Priceline, I think it was. I might be mistaken if it was. And it was such a challenge because then they were telling us, no, go tell the airline. But then the airline said, well, you booked it through Priceline, so go to the Priceline. And they were just switching back and forth. So even though it is a slightly more expensive, booking direct is usually my preferred advice because at least if you book directly with them and booking the refundable rate, which again is slightly more expensive, if anything wrong happens, maybe you have to cancel at the last second, you can just go ahead and get the refund and you have nothing to worry about. If you book the non-refundable rate, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah. That non-refundable rate. Oh, it hurts you. It hurts you.
Yeah.
It definitely hurts you in the long run. I've been there before.
Yeah, because they're gonna charge you a penalty, fee for it, and depending on the length of your hotel stay or depending your flight, most airlines are just gonna give you the flight credit. They're never gonna give you your money back. Although there has been rules in the previous administration, they had set up rules to make it much more user friendly or flyer friendly to get compensation back for like delays and stuff. Yet to be seen in this current administration if they're just gonna undo those changes. But I would say that's kind of one of the common mistakes.
I mean,
first intro into politics, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, matter of fact, actually, I saw one of your videos today responding to a fan, or I think it was a comment. Someone mentioned about how I'll get back to your page, or I'll start following your page again when you stop doing politics. And I just need people to understand sports are politics. Politics are sports.
Yeah.
There's a reason why these countries are bidding to have the World Cup.
Oh,
there's a reason why these global leaders are showing off at these World Cups and at these tournaments and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it just to be nice. There's a reason why. I need people to understand this and use the education that was given to us before the DOE gets kicked out of office.
Exactly, and it's super important. Mention that point, and we'll connect it to travel too because some Infantino showed up here in DC for the inauguration for one, right, and then. So that's one angle of it that, a lot when people say like, oh, you're missing the sports. Like, no, not me. That they are doing it on a daily basis. This is you guys are not watching the FIFA Congress, clips that they're doing, their little meetings. You don't see Infantino jet setting the world. If anything, look, I would love to have that job. And for one reason is that he gets to literally travel the entire world. That is an amazing thing, right? Meeting very questionable people, probably not the best part of that job, I have to say. But in any case, it's still it's still there. It's never going to go away. And when it comes to travel, a lot of things that affect your ability to travel to and even within the country is affected by government.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking about the government, man, with the 2025 Club World Cup coming up and the 2026 World Cup on the horizon, like, how do you think Trump era policies could affect, fans traveling to these events, especially with regards to visa restrictions and international relations and just general safety altogether?
Yeah, it's really disappointing to say the least. I've been collaborating with some organizations here in DC that are also trying to push for what is this, an easier visa process for fans to come for these tournaments. I mean, this is just, if anything, Copa America was kind of a prelude to this mega decade of sports. That's how the State Department has described it, how various government entities and other organizations related to travel have labeled it. The mega decade of sports. Copa America, Club World Cup, Men's World Cup, the LA Olympics, maybe the Women's World Cup in 2031, other smaller tournaments coming here. I mean, we usually host the World Baseball Classic here, every couple of years in Houston, Miami. So like we have all these tournaments happening. And what people fail to realize is that on the foreigners part visiting the country, those are billions of dollars that we need from tourism. This country cannot just host these types of events by itself. And so if we make it harder for a Colombian who has to wait 600 days to process their visa, Today is 490 days to go for the World Cup. So basically, any Colombian that wanted to come for the World Cup, not even this summer, World Cup next summer, and this is that Colombia has not qualified yet. We probably will, but we haven't yet. They cannot come because it's already too late. So there's an aspect of fairness. There's an aspect of missing out on that money that they would come here. If they're willing to come here, they're spending money. And it's not just on the flight and hotel. It's going to that restaurant. It's going to buy souvenirs. It's going to all of these additional places and points of business, right? That really just we miss out on that money. For the domestic fans, I think it's a little bit of, especially with these ice raids, a chilling effect. And I know when people say, but if you're not illegal, you have nothing to worry about. I think what I need people to do is this exercise. Close your eyes and imagine who is an illegal. Open your eyes. Probably me. And Yogi, you probably have a different accent. They probably look at you too.
Right.
Let's just be honest about it. So fans need to understand that these terms of, if they're illegal, this and that, how do you determine that without violating the rights of everyone to have to check their passport, their citizenship status, this and that, right? So it does create a chilling effect, even for domestic fans to travel, to want to spend the money, to then what? To be harassed by these folks.
Yeah, no. It's almost like the U.S. became one big sundown town out of nowhere.
Basically. And so then our job, right? And I'm facing that challenge in the content that I'm creating. And I think this is where, again, you bring up that comment of like, but you're interjecting politics all the time. Yeah, newsflash, I'm Latino. I've dealt personally with the issues of deportation and immigration. What do you want me to do? Just be completely blind to that fact and not inform my community that, yes, it's, I would say it's mostly Latino, that, hey, there might be a nice truck outside, MetLife Stadium. Like, you're not going to want to go and have a bad time with that. So
and I feel like that's the thing. And we'll come back to the questions on that because I have more questions about this. This is a great point because, like, I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of people forget, like, this isn't something that just impacts us here in America. Correct. It impacts everyone globally because what is essentially happening is a U.S. with it's already hard to get into this country are making it 10 times harder for a global competition that not only, like, this is the thing, it doesn't only impact fans, it impacts coaches, staff on those international teams, international players, like, and we're talking about the biggest World Cup ever, and it impacts on so many levels,
right?
That people are just like, oh, surface level. Oh, well, if they're legal, it'd be fine. Like, no, like you just said, there's no way to determine how someone's legal or illegal without violating their human rights and almost coming across as Gestapo police.
Right.
So exactly. It's like, I just, like, I think we're saying the same thing. Like, we just need people to have sympathy and common sense,
Right. And pay attention to the words that you're using, right? You're saying, they're illegal. Like, okay, tell me how they look. Like, who does an illegal look like? And then you're going to basically describe me,
Yeah, because 9 times out of 10, you're describing, not 9 times, and 10 times out of 10, you are describing a person of color.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, you're not describing
me. You're not describing me, O'Connor from Boston, that's Irish. You're not doing it.
Yeah, you're not. You're not describing Ethan from Canada. We're not doing that.
I think the number is over 600,000 undocumented Europeans. I didn't say white. I just said Europeans, right? But, like, again, you imagine European, more often than not, they're going to be white. So it's like, we're not talking about them, right? But anywho, I would say, and I was going to mention that here, Joe, the other part is we haven't even talked about the travel ban that hasn't happened yet. So if we look at the countries that were part of that travel ban last time, Iran, they're literally about to qualify for the World Cup. We're gonna ban Iran, and that team decent, and they got a fan base that does travel, right? And then obviously they got a big Iranian American community here too.
Oh gosh, you put
Um,
a Iranian game anywhere in there, like Michigan or New York or even DC?
yeah, yeah.
Man.
I mean, closer to these communities would be the closest one, Philadelphia, New York.
Yeah,
That'd be the closest ones. Let's see, Venezuela. If they make the World Cup, bye Venezuela. And it's sad, to say that, because it's like, and if you look at the how that community voted in places like Florida, they voted for the ban. So it's almost a self-inflicted, disaster when it comes to their own fan base. Like, you literally have voted for this ban to ban your own people from coming here, right? Again, this is based on the last one. We don't know what the new one's going to look like.
right.
I'm gonna throw in another country there, and then we'll talk about potentially some of the effects of the new one. Iraq could also be banned. Sudan could also be banned. Iraq and Sudan. Sudan's actually first place in their group in their qualifiers. Iraq is also in the cusp of making their first World Cup. I believe it's their first one, if not their second. So we have a bunch of countries here that could make the World Cup, but then be told, no, you're not coming because, America won't let you in. So what is the solution? Mexico and Canada are only hosting 13 games each, and none of those groups have all the games in one of those countries. They are eventually going to play in the United States at some point of the group stage.
Right.
So there's no, just send them to Mexico. No, even the Mexico group has one match in Atlanta. So they're going to be flying into the U.S. and back,
It's
back to Mexico.
It's going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a famous quote that I've heard when I was an undergrad about, like, I can forgive ignorance because you willfully do not know the difference between right and wrong. But what I cannot forgive is arrogance because you are choosing to not know.
Correct. And mind you, in a lot of these countries, they might also affect a lot of these sub-Saharan African countries as well, because in this new ban that was being discussed, they gave the president gave the State Department, I think it was 60 days to review all of the policies of all the countries that are, and if they're not being vetted properly, according to them, then consider banning them. So we could be seeing at an expanded list that it does go from a Muslim ban plus North Korea plus Venezuela to a let's just ban all the black and brown people type of list.
Pretty much.
And just almost not let anyone in except maybe Brazilians and Argentinians, and that's about it.
It's almost like the paper bag test. Like, if you're darker than this, you're not getting it. And it's not for you, buddy.
Yeah, and it's sad to say that. And it's sad that I'm having to talk about that content because it is relevant content to my community. What I've noticed is that a lot of people that make those comments about, like, wait, I'm process and that, more often than not, they voted for Trump. I mean, what can I do? I look at their profile and it's like, yeah, you voted for him. Like, it just shows of like you said, this arrogance, also of this dissonance, of this disconnect. That don't you like take 2 seconds and pay attention to the body of the work that I've done, because I've been doing this since December 2022. You don't think there's something in there that should tell you, he's looking out for his people? Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, wholeheartedly, man.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. I can't even agree more with that. But, like, I mean, given the political climate that we're in, and we know how messed up that is, like, what outside of the 2026 World Cup, what challenges will travelers have? Like, how if you could give any advice to those that are traveling here, what advice would you give them?
I think the main advice is that you stick to the cities of the host nations, because at least that's where you're going to have the most information available to you. That's where, the likely, I mean, it's tough to say likelihood of these things, like ice raids or anything not going to happen to you. I mean, I can't even say that with some sort of certainty, but at least there are more options for you in terms of just, seeking help from a consulate, seeking help from, legal resources, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that's probably your best bet. If you're from abroad, I probably wouldn't be driving around the World Cup. I know that might have been an aspirational type of trip for many of international fans, but maybe skip that one, just because can you trust the police in some states? I don't know, to say the least. I got stopped by ICE at a at an Amtrak on the Amtrak, I should say, in Jacksonville when I was in college. I was coming back from UVA down to Miami.
Yeah.
I got stopped by Border Patrol in Jacksonville. Like, imagine that. So don't put yourself in those type of compromising situations where you're by yourself. Travel in groups. Always have your documentation in hand. If not I mean, I probably would have your physical copy of your passport, but if you just feel you're gonna lose it, always have a copy of your passport and a picture of your passport on your phone. And I would even carry, like I said, I would even carry the phone number of your nearest consulate nearby, near to whatever of the cities you're traveling to. Again, just to be prepared. And and I hate to create this environment where, like, I know some people have said I fear mongering. It's not that. It's just, if you're prepared, you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
But then, say, God forbid, that situation happens on the ground, you're ready. You have your paperwork, you have phone numbers. Let your friends and family, like other friends and family know, hey, this is our game plan, and don't deviate from it. Something last minute, you know what? I'm gonna stick to my plan, because then that's how people at least know where you're at, and then you should have a good time. I would love to tell fans, you're gonna have a good time here in the States. Oh, you're definitely gonna have a good time in Mexico and Canada too. As long as you're not looking for trouble, you're gonna be fine. But I know with these incidents of ICE and other perhaps issues or moments of police harassing people of color, that's why traveling in groups is so important instead of traveling by yourself.
Yeah, honestly, man. Um, well, to kind of put it on a lighter note, we kind of switch the tone because
Yeah, absolutely.
honestly, what we just talked about by itself could be a whole separate podcast.
Yeah.
Everything about that, but I mean, so many good information there. Like, what I'm trying to figure out how the best phrases. As someone who is likely to travel to many different countries for football, like, what destination stood out to you the most? Outside, I mean, we talked about Doha, we talked about the Clover Coast, but what other destinations have stood out to you when you went to go travel, either abroad or here in the States?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Mexico City
Mm-hmm.
was such a cultural experience for me as a Colombian, and
Okay.
for it's funny because when I first went to visit my in-laws in Eastern Washington, it was definitely a worlds apart. I'm from Miami. She's from this small town. Mexican, Colombian. The food is not the same. The music, I mean, we like each other's music a bit. Like mariachi kind of connects both
Yeah.
countries a bit, actually. Colombians love a lot of mariachi, but, like, even my Spanish, my wife's grandma would say, like, it's not that nice. It speaks too fast. And so you have these cultural differences even amongst us. And so when we went to Mexico City, right? I promise that. So that way, when we went to Mexico City, and we've been there 4 times since, it is such a beautiful city for
Mhm.
all of the culture that it has.
Oh, wow.
Is it? It's the biggest city in the Americas, first of all. Is it chaotic? Absolutely. Could it be hot in the summers? Yes, it is hot in the summers. Is it, is there a lot of, like, traffic? Yes, there is a lot of traffic. A lot of people. Yes. But the parks, beautiful. The number of museums, amazing. The street food, fantastic. The just It is such a wonderful city, and I invite everybody to go to Mexico City during Dia de los Muertos, or probably anywhere in Mexico during Dia de los Muertos,
Mhm.
because in Colombia we don't celebrate that holiday, right? We don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah.
It was such a fascinating cultural experience that it really emotionally overwhelmed me,
Oh, wow.
because you're seeing families celebrate life, but then you see all of these offerings outside of the homes of their, of their past loved ones, even of their pets. And it was just so moving, because you're just like, there's like a celebration of the afterlife in many ways here, that, like I said, I don't think anywhere else in Latin America celebrates it like that, or at least definitely not South America celebrates it like
Mhm.
that. And I think as a Colombian, as a Latino Americano, it felt very important for me to be there, to experience that, and to embrace it.
Wow.
Because she's,
Yeah.
I'm my hopefully our future kids will be, they will be half Mexican. So that's gonna be very much part of their culture, and just I was very blessed, and I felt blessed, and I felt thankful that Ciudad de Mexico is just so welcoming in that way.
Yeah, and speaking about that, like, what are some of the most unexpected and like surprising things that's come across in your travels to like games? Because I mean, like when you're going to these games, or even like embracing yourself in the culture, I'll break this part up into two parts. But like
Mhm.
when you're going to the games, are you injecting yourself into the supporters group, or are you more so like taking it all in, kind of just sitting there watching the supporters groups, watching the game, taking it all in from a stadium sense, and embracing yourself in the culture? Like, what were some of the surprising things that you saw about like the mix of culture? Because it's always that experience of like, all right, like we talked about it earlier, like, all right, is this a safe environment? This
Mhm.
looks safe. How do I make sure I'm not being disrespectful? How do I make sure, but I'm also being open
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the
yeah.
same
No,
time? How do
absolutely.
you tell that line?
No, absolutely. And it's a perfectly good question to ask because, you know, I guess sometimes, my wife always reminds me that sometimes, when we vacate, there's a difference between traveling and vacationing. Vacationing,
Mhm.
in many ways, you're just kind of there to just, sit and just relax and kind of be in your own bubble. Whereas with travel, you are kind of putting yourself in some uncomfortable situations. You're supposed to challenge what you thought things were. And so when you ask that question, I think that's a perfect question
Yeah.
because when I went to Morocco, I cheered with the supporters of the Sounders there, right? And so there was a bit of like safety in numbers. There's a bit of like, yeah, we're in the same group together, right? We're entering this experience of like cheering it for our team abroad. Like you don't know what could happen, even though generally we didn't feel like anything hostile was gonna happen, but it's still a little bit of that uncertainty, right? Um, and then for example, the USA Mexico match that we went for the World Cup qualifiers, that was back in 2021. That was like right after as COVID was opening things up. And actually, funny enough, we ended up getting sick of COVID right after we came back from Mexico City. So it was just like terrible for us.
Yeah, that
But at
sucks.
that match, we sat with the Mexican fans. I saw the American fans all surrounded by riot police, and I was not like loudly cheering for the US. I probably should have cheered a little bit more for Mexico. I will say that. But it was both funny to hear the Mexican fans kind of just boo Tata Martino like crazy. They were like, "Hey man, hurry up at the game. I gotta catch the train. I gotta go back home. You guys ain't gonna score. Like, what the hell?" And then at times, well, actually, when the U.S. almost scored at one of the chances, there was this one American fan. He was yapping a little too much. I'm like, "Hey, bro, like I'm not helping you out. You get jumped outside the stadium. Like you've decided to yap your mouth. I'm not there to help you, and I don't even have a U.S. jersey on. I'm being completely neutral here." So there's those situations. And then there was, if I may add, the one that we recently just had going to Scotland. I'm a part owner of the Caledonian Braves over there
Yeah.
in Glasgow, Scotland. So going there as an owner is a totally different experience. I'm a Latino owner of a club that, we have the ambition of in 10 years' time, we will get to the top flight. Like, why? Like, what a almost kind of like I saw it as a generational wealth opportunity. Let me
Yeah.
invest into this team. Let me put some serious money. I put $1,000 on my World Cup savings to that team. You know what? Maybe in 10 years we do get to the top flight. And you know what? That investment is going to be very nice, generational wealth building thing that I have there for my future kids and grandkids,
Yeah.
So going there as an owner was just so fascinating because I'm like walking, I'm like, hey, I'm one of the owners of the team. And they're like so welcoming. They were
Oh my
such
gosh.
wonderful people. The club president just like, welcomed me, like introduced me to everybody. And more so, it was the parents of the players. A lot of these players are in your young 20s. They're just trying to make it as, if not, semi-pro, they're trying to make it pro. This is a fifth division team, but the parents being there and being supportive of their children, and they're talking to us like, oh yeah, like it's sometimes very hard to see them play because they might get injured, and they have seen their kids get injured. Amazing welcoming people.
Oh
And so
wow.
those are such different experiences that I've been able to gain from going to these different places. Not to mention the pickup games. I remember one back when we were in our honeymoon. I was in Tokyo, and we went
Mhm.
up to the rooftop. There was a rooftop like soccer pitch
Oh
there.
yeah, I think I've seen that before on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah, they actually
Yeah.
have a bunch of them there. And so I went to that one, to one of those, and all of the players were Chinese exchange students.
Oh wow.
And I was just like, hey, I don't know Chinese or Japanese, guys. Let me want me to come in, and they're looking at me like, yeah, jump in. We figured it out. I had an assist.
Nah, there you go.
Amazing experience. Because like, hey, yo, look, I can play with anybody. I think those are the types of moments where, like, when you're traveling, especially if you're able to do this younger, right? Not necessarily in my case, where like, you have your partner, you have to like, be mindful of certain other things. But if you're able to travel by yourself, push yourself to have those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think that's a cool thing. And obviously, you had to push yourself to do this and putting your content out there on social media.
Yeah.
So I think this is a fitting question, but like the rise of digital tools and social media, how have you seen the way fans plan and experience international football matches change over the years?
I think that for me, I think the way I see it is that fans are more open to different experiences than maybe what they thought. So, like, for example, I think generally the main travel destination for football is still going to Europe to watch one of the European clubs, because a lot of of my followers do have a club that they really support and everything. I kind of don't. I support Tottenham. Sure, it's kind of sad they lost today at the Carabao Cup. A little bit,
Yeah, that's fine.
it's fine, right? It's kind of like damn stuff, but tough seeing on TV. But I think that maybe with my content, I'm, showing a Latino traveler, because that part of the identity is super important to me. B, that you can actually have luxury experiences if you properly manage your money. So that's it. It's almost like, yes, I talk about soccer. My content is about soccer, but the foundational root is financial management.
Yeah.
It's doing the 101 basics of economics, of home econ, at parts too. It's gotta save your money, gotta make your payments on time. If you're gonna use a credit card, gotta pay that off and everything. And building on that knowledge, because I didn't learn this right away. I had my first credit card when I was 26 years old, and it was a secure credit card. I was building my credit at 26, like a little bit, whereas some other people have that advantage, right? From past wealth, from parents and everything, they have that advantage. I had to learn all of this myself.
Yeah.
And so I think that opening that opportunity to, like, hey guys, you could just travel to Tangier, see this unique game, as opposed to like Europe. Which, mind you, nothing wrong with Europe, right? I went to go see Rayo Vallecano. I was trying to see Falcao play there when
Oh,
he was
word.
at Rayo Vallecano, but he didn't get subbed in. So I was like, rats. But I went there. I went to my first European match, Rayo Vallecano. So it was like, cool. I got to see that game, right? But yeah, I think it's just more about opening the possibilities for people to just realize, look, if you have a financial game plan together, go travel, go see some games, go explore the culture.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's just such a cool thing, and hearing about it, man, from your perspective, it's very basic stuff. Like, you see a lot of these content creators go out here, travel and whatnot, but they're fairly European based, where it's fairly easy to travel.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that here in America, and the fact that you're able to do it, but also giving them that conversation piece of like, hey, look, I am doing this, but it's not like I'm coming from wealth. Like, I am saving, I'm doing these things. You're passing on. It's not like you're gatekeeping it, which I think we need more of. Obviously,
Yeah.
more in the second content create.
Yeah, and there needs to be a lot more transparency too, especially from the travel content creator side as well, because it does, at times, when people don't understand these concepts of travel points and miles, for example, they make it look too easy, right? Oh, just get this credit card and you're good there. It's like, no, hold on a second. There's a little bit more to it. When people ask me, what's the best credit card to get out there? I don't know. What do you spend your money on? What type of travel you want to do? There's a lot more to it. There's no such thing as a best travel rewards credit card. Like cash back is like, yeah, just get the one that gives you the most cash back. But even then, is there a category that you spend the most on? What do I mean by category? Do you budget? So again, it almost always goes back to those basic econ things that if we all do this, look, Right now, I only have $500 saved for the World Cup. I know it sounds kind of weird because they're like, "You've been doing this since 2022. How can you only have 500?" Well, because I had 6,000 in December, but I decided to pay off my student loans. I was like, "Nope, I'm getting this done. I'm not gonna go into 2025 with more debt. I'm done."
Yeah.
So
Look, I'm right there with you, man. I got 4,000 left
okay,
on mine, and I'm like, and like I got one credit card, and I'm chipping away. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm still doing the saving part and
yeah,
being a teacher. Like DoorDash Instacart, baby. Everything
yeah.
I make from that goes straight to a World Cup fund. Like,
Yep, yep. And I mean,
but,
and you know, at times, you know, I do youth coaching right now, and so right now
mhm.
I'm looking for my next contracts. I'm doing youth coaching. I used to do tutoring, but that was always a grind. And then, you know, of course, as a creator, you earn some money, but that's always, you know, not always
It's
consistent
not
income
what people
there.
think it is.
Yeah, no, yeah. Hey, yo, if you want to go into content creating, let me tell you right now, you better have a job on the side because that is what's going to get you the money. That's what's going to
Yeah.
pay you the bills, not the content creating. It takes a heck of a lot of work and a lot of time. But I think what I am grateful for in doing all this content is that it has been helping people.
Yeah.
During Copa America, for example, I had so many messages of people telling me, "Yo, man, thank you so much for telling me how these tickets work. Like, I was worried about getting the wrong tickets. You know, hey man, you helped me save like, you know, because of your tips, you helped me save like $2,000, $3,000." And it really meant a lot that I'm helping all, you know, fans, never met them and everything, you know, that they're being able to go see these games, you know, and Copa America was a nice little preview of what we might have in 26. And they were able to, you know, go see their favorite national teams in a financially responsible way. And that was very cool to see. And even helping some fans that did mess up. I had one fan that unfortunately bought the tickets in a very scammy, sleazy website. You go through those like the ones that the Google search gives you first. Is like avoid those at all costs. You know, she got scammed like $3,000. She was able to work it out with her credit card. I think they got most of the money back.
Oh, man.
You know, so in many ways, it's almost kind of becoming like a consumer advocate,
Yeah.
you know, for a lot of people, because quite frankly, they don't make it easy for fans. You know, for Copa America, you know, people were buying tickets from Vivid Seats and StubHub, and it's like, well, wait a minute, it was supposed to be Ticketmaster. I saw people at the line, like basically like kind of collapsing because they're like, wait a minute, what do you mean I don't have the ticket? Because there's so many different ticket vendors. So it's just, let's just hope that FIFA just for the World Cup decides to just be, nope, you're buying it from us and avoiding all of those issues,
Yeah.
like how they've done in previous World Cups. I hope that this whole thing with Ticketmaster that they did for the Club World Cup, I don't know if you saw today,
Oh no,
it
I
looks like
haven't.
they did slash prices for the Club World Cup because they've been overcharging. And it's like, yeah, no, like,
Yeah.
of course you have been charging over a lot higher. People don't want to be paying $400, $500 to see Real Madrid or even Inter Miami. They don't want to be paying more of
No,
that. You got the World Cup coming
that's
up.
the most annoying thing about it too. Is like you get on there and you see the price of tickets, and you realize like, oh, somebody already bought this ticket. Now they're just reselling it.
They're just reselling it.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, the resale culture here in the United States. I mean, granted, I'm sure it's a global phenomenon, but I think a lot of people just don't realize just how damaging it is. And you know, and again, this is where politics and advocating against these practices would be helpful, but there's not enough consumer pushback against these, you know, against Ticketmaster, against these companies that allow for the resale, allow for dynamic pricing, which is the new thing that came about. So as more people want to buy, for example, the Real Madrid tickets, the price went higher just because of the demand. Why does this happen? Why can't they do this? Because they can, because they've
yeah,
lobbied Congress and they don't pass any laws to control this.
yeah,
So it's funny how, again, you know, people complain about, you know, oh, you talk about too much problems. Like, yeah, but if we would, you know, for the things that we do need it, like, you know,
yeah,
it would be
no,
useful for all of us.
yeah, no. Like I think because me and my wife just were looking at the Beyonce tickets. You know, Beyonce
Hmm.
announced her tour, and without even going there, we were like, all right, how? What do you think the cheapest ticket is? I was like $1,000. That thousand.
Yeah,
And it was like $950 for like
yeah. Oof.
nosebleed. I'm like, that's not even worth it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not even worth it.
And it's the nosebleeds, right? And it's an,
Right.
yeah. So
You gotta climb 50 feet to get up there. By the time you get there, you're winded, tired, sweating. It's the middle of the summer, and I was paying like $1,800, which is like my mortgage to
Yeah.
go watch Beyonce who look like this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a certain aspect too where like, a lot of this content was also from that perspective because I've seen like people from these random like news clips and they'll be like, oh yeah, I sold my house to come see my team. It's like, no, I don't want you to sell your house, fam.
Yeah, no.
You don't have
Like
to sell the house.
what was the documentary I was watching? Oh, it was on Copa America. And Elle went to go to Argentina to go like experience the World Cup through the eyes of Argentina. And there was one guy, I'll never forget it. He was like, him and his son were getting ready to go to Qatar to go see Argentina. And he asked him, he was like, it's the quarterfinal. I think it was the semifinal quarterfinal game. He was like, how are you guys paying to do all this? Like, it's expensive.
Yeah.
He was like, oh yeah, I sold the house and sold the car. And I'm like, what? Like, you do realize, and I understand, light soccer down there is different.
Yeah.
But you do understand when you get back, you have nowhere to stay and no transportation to do anything.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't ever think I could be that comfortable.
No.
I don't think I
No,
can.
and for most of us here in America, we know how hard it is, how life is already as it is, and especially for our communities. That's kind of exactly what I also wanted to do this content because I was like, I know there's gonna be some fellow parcero that's gonna be out there on TV. He's gonna say, "Yo, I can't my grandma out of the house, Granny, adios pues. I can't have you." No, bro, like you can't have that happening, man. Like we got to.
I think my wife would divorce me on this one if I told her,
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I sold the car." Like I sold the car to go watch Jamaica play in LA.
Yeah.
She would be like, "Wait, what? You did what?" Absolutely.
I see your court. I see your court on.
Yeah, exactly. She'll be like, "Oh, okay, cool, that's fine." Get back.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it, a lot of the content I produce, and I think a lot of how I've seen the world for the last 4 years, traveling to these different games, has been through that lens. And actually, if I may add, and I don't know how much time we have left, but I went to go see the Colombia women's team back in 23 for the Women's Gold Cup, and I was very unfortunately surprised by just the pushback that I got from a lot of the comments of like, this guy went to go see a women's game all in San Diego and like did the trip at 12 hours. I was like, yeah, that was the first time I've ever seen the national team ever, women's or men. Why would I not go see, Linda Caicedo, top 5 women's player in the world? Why would
Those
I not?
guys aren't real football fans, man. Let me tell you something. So I am Jamaican, and whatnot. And I remember in 1998, my mom, who does not watch sports, she can only name 2 athletes, Walter Payton and Magic Johnson. That is it. She can't even name Michael Jordan. 98, Jamaica got qualified for World Cup. Yeah. She took me out of summer camp to go watch the first game because she was like, "This is something you need to experience."
Who did Jamaica play in that World Cup?
I
remember the unis.
France.
Okay.
Yeah, we played France. So that was like a huge experience.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, so this World Cup that just happened, this is the first one like since then. And my mom didn't know Jamaican women qualified for the World Cup. So I called my mom and we're on the phone watching the game as Jamaica is playing France. Yeah. And as the goal goes in, both of us just start cheering, we're crying and whatnot. But like that was to us, that was huge because if you know Jamaicans, like we love the game of soccer.
Yeah.
We love it. But our national team just ain't capable of doing the right thing.
Man, it's just they one more. They need a better federation. I mean, granted, I think you could say that for about like half of the nation's national teams. They just need better in the federation level. But yeah, when for example, with the Jamaican ladies were playing Colombia, that was a very difficult match. I was like, hey, Colombia, is facing, they have a very tough challenge here. But like, yeah, like I was like, why wouldn't I go support? Like, this is the country of my blood, and like, us Colombians, I think generally are very much also have grown to support. I will say that we, as with a lot of societies, have grown to support the women's team. Whereas I don't know about the U.S. I mean, the U.S. has kind of been just this up-down thing. I know a lot of people, at least a lot of the backlash against the U.S. women's team has been this cultural war that has been launched against them. But yeah, I think it is important for us men to go support women's soccer for all of the reasons.
Yeah.
For
Oh,
all the reasons. And yeah, we lost. Okay, cool. But I got to see Linda Caicedo. How many people can actually say that now that they got to see Linda Caicedo play in person?
yeah.
Not a lot of people. So, it was disappointing to see that. But, I turned it, with the content that I showed, I was like, hey, yo, by the way, you could do this trip in 24 hours. Mind you, little sleep. Mind you, I actually did a hostel, which, again, kind of with the whole travel thing. I don't know if I would do it again. I'm in my 30s. I kind of need my own, space and everything, but an experience nonetheless that I got to enjoy.
Right. Well, man, honestly, the way how this conversation is going, it feels like we can go on for hours and hours and
Absolutely.
hours and just talk endlessly about any and everything, man. But I just want to give you the space right now to plug your information. Where can people follow you? How can they support you? And everything like that, because this has been honestly one of my favorite conversations
I'm
thus
glad
far
I'm
in this
glad to hear that,
podcast.
man. I'm glad to, and like you said, I think we could definitely talk more about like the history of soccer and how it relates, to Black History Month, and just Black history in general, because in a lot of our teams in South America, I mean, so our best athletes have always been Afro Colombians or Afro descendants of these different countries, and I'll say that it's very important to have those conversations and to uplift those stories, because so many times a lot of the struggles that happen here in America, with the African American community, we see it's almost a carbon copy of the same stories in Latin America. But with that being said, yeah, you could absolutely follow me on TikTok, on Instagram, Blue Sky. Subscribe to my YouTube, because just to hedge on the another this time permanent TikTok ban. Definitely want to follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube. On YouTube, I'm able to talk more long form content about some of these things,
Yeah.
because as you probably have seen yourself, it's very difficult to explain these topics in 90 seconds.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I
So,
believe it. I believe it. I
so yeah,
believe
so you can
it.
catch me there and visit my website, travelfutbolfan.com. I am building a newsletter list as well. My first newsletter went out today to commemorate
Okay.
490 days. The next one will happen every 10 days until we get to June 11, 2026.
Well, man, most definitely. We're gonna make sure to plug that in the description, and I'm gonna definitely subscribe to that, man, because
Absolutely.
what you are doing is a godsend, and it's something that I think a lot of other people are gonna hop onto, but it's gonna be by that time it's gonna be way too late, and you're
Yeah.
already ahead of it and whatnot, man. So
I will say that a lot of this journey has gotten me to this point, and that's been fantastic. I've seen the support, but I would say that going back to one of those questions about what's the biggest mistake, you probably haven't followed me these past couple of years, or you waiting till the last minute to plan your travel, because you're gonna be paying so much more money. So as soon as possible, start thinking. I know we don't know where the teams are playing or anything like that, but start thinking about how you want to travel. Start saving your money in a high yield savings account. Do that, and at least that will start taking care of a lot of the mental load that you need to do for planning for your World Cup travels.
right, man. Well, as always, listen, I'm pretty sure you enjoyed this podcast and whatnot. As always, remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Blue Sky and on YouTube and on Instagram at Can I Kick It FC. Also, remember it's Black History Month going on, so we're doing, as always been doing, our 28 days of celebrating Black content creators, coaches, players every single day of this month. So, with that being said, for Danny, for myself, we will holler at you guys later. Be easy and be safe. Man, that